You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Let's talk some football and continue previewing all the teams in the NFL. The big story a couple days ago at training camp was a brawl that broke out between the Giants and, well, the Giants. Basically, the entire team was reportedly in this brawl. Joe Judge, the head coach of the team, stopped practice, made the team do 100-yard wind sprints, and it became a big story. For more on the Giants and their upcoming season, we go out to our progressive guest line right now. We bring on the Giants beat reporter for the NJ Record, the great Art Stapleton, joins us here on the show. Art, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jake. And, it's been an eventful week for the New York Giants.
Was the fight the other day, Art, in all your years covering the NFL, covering the Giants, was it as crazy of a training camp brawl that you've ever seen?
You know, it's funny, Jake, because, look, we know the business we're in, right? I mean, the word brawl gets a little bit more juice than fight. I used melee, maybe a scrum. I mean, this wasn't, back in the day, professional wrestling fans, the ECW arena where they're throwing chairs around and hitting people with helmets and stuff and garbage cans. But, look, I mean, it's just the way it happened. It's actually pretty innocently. The first day in pads, Corey Clement, running back, breaks into the open field. Xavier McKinney, defensive back, kind of comes in and pops him a little bit, knocking him to the ground. And in that drill, a normal tackling drill, you wouldn't normally think anything of it, but in that drill, they weren't expecting McKinney to come up and pop. And then you've got guys that, Evan Ingram pushes Jabril Peppers, and then Logan Ryan pushes Evan Ingram from behind, and then the entire team just kind of converges. And when you have, a big group of, almost 90 people just kind of pushing and shoving, it almost looked like a mosh pit at a concert. It gets you notice. I've seen stuff before. I don't think it was the worst situation. I mean, look, the Giants had a situation a couple of years ago when Snacks Harrison ended up with Will Hernandez's helmet and swung it at him. And that didn't stop practice and didn't cause the head coach at the time, Pat Shermer, to go all Herb Brooks. But this was definitely a defining moment for this team. It'll be interesting to see which way they go from here because Joe Judge certainly sent a message.
Art, do you think Joe Judge privately pulled Daniel Jones aside and was like, hey, man, don't be anywhere near a pile like that again if something like that were to ever happen?
Well, I would. I mean, I don't think you want to separate your quarterback from the team. That, to me, that's part of the credibility that Daniel Jones has earned in this locker room, whether it hasn't happened completely on the field. Off the field, he's one of the guys. So I think there probably are some guys that looked at it and said, oh, this is great. But, yeah, I mean, if you're a coaching staff, you've got to tell your quarterback, get out of the way, do not get involved. That was probably the most frightening sight if you're a Giants fan, really anyone involved with the Giants, seeing Jones's red 8 jersey. You got the number 8 red jersey, which is supposed to be no contact, and he's getting pulled out from under the pile in a situation where you shouldn't really put your quarterback or really any player in this position. Jake, the one other thing I'll say is that I just think this team, they went 6-8, 6-10 last year. They feel pretty good about themselves. I don't know if Joe Judge thought this was that kind of moment, but he needed to humble this team a little bit too. I mean, you're a week into training camp. Maybe you're feeling a little too good about yourself, and then this happens. And for a coach who is all about the details and knowing that every detail will affect your success or failure in a game, I think he just, the pot boiled over, and he was about to make sure that, this wasn't just a take a lap around the field. This was an entire team doing wind sprints, doing push-ups. And then he made a point to tell us yesterday he ended practice early. They still had 2 more periods to go. They had worked for 2 hours, just about 2 hours. They had 2 more periods to go, and he essentially kicked the entire team off the practice field after all that stuff. So we could debate all we want about whether a head coach in today's age should be doing that in the NFL. But I think Joe Judge did what he thought he needed to do for this team. And from everything I've heard the last 48 hours, the message was received, and they're going to move forward. And I don't think you're going to be seeing something like that on the practice field ever again with the Giants.
Art Stapleton with us here. He covers the Giants, of course, for the NJ Record. Staying with Daniel Jones, Art, it's no secret, it's a huge year for him entering the 3rd season. The Giants went out there in the offseason, and they added a variety of different playmakers for him, including Kenny Galladay. How has Daniel Jones looked so far this summer, and what are reasonable expectations for the quarterback entering his 3rd season?
Well, the irony is that on the first day of pads, that was the best practice Daniel Jones has had, maybe as a Giant. The ball didn't touch the ground. The offense looked really, really good. Now, Galladay goes off with a slight hamstring tweak that day, and then you have the brawl. So Jones's performance is kind of like, 3rd or 4th on the list of things that people wanted to talk about after the day that the Giants had. I think the reasonable expectation for Daniel Jones is he's got to be a reason why the Giants win games. He doesn't have to be the only reason, but he can't be the reason that the Giants lose games. And while that seems simplistic, I don't think it's a question of talent. I think the talent is there. I think I don't want to put him in Jameis Winston's ballpark yet, but the turnovers certainly put him in that ballpark. And I think that's what the Giants need to see. They need to see, an aggressive Daniel Jones, but a smart Daniel Jones, and not putting the ball in harm's way. And to me, the bottom line for him in 2021 will be come December when the scouting process really hits into high gear. Do the Giants have a reason to look for another quarterback in the draft next year? You need, if you're Daniel Jones, to make sure that this team does not look at quarterbacks and say, you know what, we need to fall in love with, some of these guys that may be at the top of the list come the 2022 draft. I think that's where Jones, he checks the boxes. He wins over his teammates. His teammates love him. They respect him. His coaches are behind him. Ownership is behind him. The bottom line is the results this year go a long way towards determining where Daniel Jones is going into next season and then beyond that.
Art, is it weird for you, because you covered Eli Manning's entire career with the Giants, is it weird just how similar Daniel Jones sounds to Eli Manning? Same mannerisms as well. There's so many similarities between Eli and Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I joked a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you're a big Marvel fan, but they had the Loki series out, and it was all about variants. And I said Daniel Jones is an Eli Manning variant. It's a different timeline. It's Eli Manning reincarnated. I think the Giants know what they like. I think when you have so much success with Eli Manning as your quarterback, he's the only quarterback in Giants history, that has 2 Super Bowl MVPs. So it's not that you go out and you want to make okay, we got to get this guy 2.0. But I do think that they believe what works in this market at quarterback, and you can't factor the off the field stuff separately from the on the field stuff. It's all one big piece. And I think what they like about Jones off the field is he does have similarities to Eli Manning, who managed to go his entire career and essentially not take one misstep in the media with words or actions. And I think they like that about Jones. It's weird, Jake, because think about Daniel Jones. He comes on, he's in Eli's shadow. He's basically next to him in the locker room as a rookie. So the media's in the locker room. Then last year, when it's finally his team and Eli is retired, it's all on Zoom. So there's no personal connection with Daniel Jones with anyone outside of that locker room. So going into year 3, that's a big part of this for Daniel Jones, I think, is that no one in New York has really seen Daniel Jones away from the field, how he ticks, how he operates on a week-to-week basis. We basically saw him in a box on a computer after the highs and the lows last year. I think this year will be different for Jones in that respect. And the way he carried himself in person the other day after that quote-unquote brawl, I think kind of opened some people's eyes in terms of who Daniel Jones is. Maybe we got to see a little bit different side of Daniel Jones than what we have seen, and maybe the side that teammates have seen, and that's why they buy in to him as the future quarterback of the Giants.
Art Stapleton with us here. Finally, Art, I know a lot of Giants fans care about this, and certainly any football fan that intends to play fantasy football cares about this. What is the latest with Saquon Barkley? Is he going to be healthy and play week 1 for the Giants?
Well, Saquon looks great. He's working with the training staff because he's still on the physically unable to perform list, and that really is just paperwork. So he's practicing about 150 yards away from where the media viewing area is. But, hey, look, I got a new pair of glasses. I got distance now, so I can watch Saquon a little bit, and he does look good. I mean, he's cutting. He's running at full speed. He's not doing it with any other teammates. He's doing it with a training staff member. But I think the Giants are playing it cautious. What I would tell people who are curious about Saquon's timetable, my understanding and what I can gather, I think if you look at their joint practices with Cleveland and New England, that is really a 2-week window where I think Saquon will not only be activating, but he may be out there doing some individual drills with his team. So I'm looking at Cleveland, which is on the 19th and the 20th, their practices, that it would not surprise me if Saquon is activated and then he works gradually into practice. And then really by New England the following week, they have that preseason game, which is the finale on the 29th. It'll be debated whether or not Saquon should get a few snaps in that game. I think there are some people in the organization who want him to be able to get that live action. They don't want the first hit he takes to be from Von Miller coming off the edge in week 1. But right now, I'd say cautious optimism with Saquon. I don't think if you're a fantasy owner, if you're expecting Saquon to carry the ball 20 times in week 1, that's realistic. But I do think come October, you're settled in, and Saquon is the lead back for the Giants, and they hope and he hopes that he's the guy who's making that offense go.
He's Art Stapleton, NJ Record Giants beat reporter. You can follow him on Twitter at Art_Stapleton. He's covered the Giants for a long time in the NFL and does a great job doing just that. Art, appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Always, Jake. Thanks. Good luck with everything.
Art Stapleton was there on the Progressive guest line, quoting your home insurance. It just got easier when you use Progressive's Home Quote Explorer. Quote and buy all online at progressive.com. Quick break, and we continue here on a Thursday. Jake Asman with you. This is the Jake Asman Show on Sports Map Radio.
The All-Nighter with Craig Kosh here.
This week was Big 12 Media.